right. So, welcome to the Crystal Fedeli podcast, where we examine what happens when institutional norms and practices diverge from evidence, autonomy, and lived reality, and how that divergence, particularly when facing coercive control, is not interrupted, can produce serious and compounding harm over time. My name is Crystal Fedeli. I'm a social researcher, policy analyst, and the founder of You Made a Way, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that supports mothers experiencing financial coercive control as they navigate the family court and social services systems. This episode is a part of a broader research and public education series connected to my work examining the family court response to financial coercive control in the economic partnership of marriage, and how institutional responses in single income houses, particularly when financial coercive control is not interrupted, can produce economic destabilization, litigation inequality, and long-term cascading consequences. Part of this project is making visible the connection between lived experience, research, and policy. Research is made up of real lives, and evidence based practice should reflect that reality rather than obscure it. So today I am joined by Brittany, who has agreed to share her lived experience navigating financial coercive control and the family court system. So, Brittany, thank you so much for being here and for your willingness to have this conversation with me today.
Thank you for having me. I feel like my situation is so unique that hopefully it can reach somebody else in this situation and maybe change things a little bit to where they're not having to go through what I'm going through.
That is definitely the goal. Yeah. So, the first section I want to get into is reframing domestic violence, coercive control as the governing model. So, this section focuses on coercive control as a broader pattern and financial control as one of the main ways that that pattern can show up. So, which I think is actually for any person in power who sees this, it's actually one of the easiest indicators that there was and or will be coercive control through other levers, whether it's psychological, physical, through litigation, custody, co-parenting, sexual, etc. Right, and so it's like so easy to spot because it happens right under our noses every day. And so I want people in positions of power to start recognizing that that's a clear symptom and indicator of coercive control, instead of just brushing it off as, oh, well, we'll just figure it out later, like the family court system in practice does. So, anyways, to begin, I'd like to understand more about the relationship itself, and how control operated over time. So, first, I want to ask you, looking back, did the abuse feel more like an isolated incident or more like an ongoing pattern of control that affected different areas of your life?
I feel like it was a very slow creep into controlling my entire life. Like it was just like a very small, slow snowball rolling down a hill. And as the years went on, it just got more and more obvious. And then finally it reached its point where it was like, I see what's going on here and I don't like it.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's definitely
So,
like slow happening.
yeah. So when you talk about this slow snowball that kind of just starts out small and just gets bigger and bigger and bigger over time, do you mean in terms of sort of the levers and the ways in which it was appearing? Like, did it start kind of maybe psychological, and or did it start physical and then start becoming psychological and then like keep adding? Or was it sort of growing in magnitude, like it was just through psychological means or just through physical means, but it just kept getting worse physically, kept getting worse psychologically? Does my question kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think it started like as like a combination of financial because I was a stay-at-home mom, and up until we had our first child, I worked, and I feel like that's kind of the starting point of when it started financially, and then we just kind of rolled downhill, and then it started turning into financial, emotional, psychological, and I look back on it going, man, the mind games that I had to play on the daily that I didn't even know I was a part of.
Mm, yeah, yeah. So financially, psychologically, and then would you say it kind of just got worse financially and psychologically over time?
Definitely did.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Like
I'm
we
sorry,
finally
Brittany.
got to a point where I was afraid to simply go to the store and buy groceries because it was like if I don't have a certain number in the bank account by the time I get everything we need, that's going to set him off. And it was just a big stress of how do I make sure my children have what they need and we get what we need, and then I still make him happy. Like, it was a never ending cycle of there's not enough money, and it's like, well, the kids needed it, and I was constantly justifying everything and trying to make it make sense to him of, hey, they needed this.
Oh, Brittany, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that happened. And thanks for your courage in sharing all of this. That's awful. So, so you said the control showed up psychologically, financially. So it definitely showed up in different ways. And now let me ask you this: when you started to, or did you start to assert your independence at a certain point, like kind of like I can't do this anymore? Was there a certain breaking
Started right towards the end. I think it was like the last 2 years we were together. My youngest had finally started school, and I was just kind of like, I'm done with this. And so I was like, I need to find a way that I could start bringing in a little bit of my own money and breaking away from him. And that's when I started gig work with Uber Eats, Amazon Flex, and DoorDash, and started kind of getting my own independence. And then there was one time that our car just completely broke down, transmission went out, and my aunt so graciously said, hey, you can have this car whenever you finish paying it off. I only have like 6 months payments left. When you finish paying it off, it can be yours. And I looked at it like, okay, cool. This is my like gaining my independence back because I had sold the only other car in my name to help him with one of his business ventures. So I was like, okay, this is my chance to get a car, get my independence back, and then I'm free. It's like you have no say over me. And I guess he kind of figured that out very quickly and did the mental mind games and ended up convincing me to give it back to her and getting another car that was only in his name. And looking
mm,
back, I go, why did I do that? Like, why did I do that? Because whenever we finally did split, I couldn't take the car. I couldn't keep the apartment. I had no money, no nothing. And then he turned around and used that plus a recent brain surgery I had had just a couple months prior to remove a tumor. He stacked all of that against me in an emergency hearing. It was like, she's an unfit mother. So I
wow.
kind of look back at it going, wow. Like when you take a step back and you look at it, you go, wow, that was all like perfectly set up. He just had to hit that one domino to like let everything fall into place for him.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but so he wanted you to be a stay-at-home mom, right? Um, he wanted everything in his name. You were able to get a car that was separate from being in his name, and he conveniently, logically, because that's what they do, they're very logical. It sounds logical, right? But in the
They
end,
make it sound really good.
right. But it's so interesting how it so logically makes everything in their name and under their power and control. And so, and then, yeah, and to almost like entrap you. And then you have how did he use the brain tumor against you, if you don't mind me asking?
From my understanding, with the court filings of what he did is I had a brain tumor in my cerebellum back here,
Uh huh.
and I had it removed, and it was just like before in hospital. I turned it in a month because I got
Oh,
meningitis and I had some complications. So when I
so you
finally got to
cut
go
out for a
home,
second.
he was really upset about it.
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second. So you had a brain tumor, and what? And so you got a brain
I
tumor. They
had to
got it
have it
taken out.
removed, and then I had some complications, and I ended up getting meningitis.
Mm.
So I was in the hospital for like a month.
Hmm.
And right before that, we had had a disagreement because I came home from doing my gig work, and my 9-year-old at the time runs up to me, Mom, Mom, look at what Dad did. And I go around the corner to the kitchen, and there's a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's like the perfect height that if you would have missed that wall, you would have hit one of the kids.
Right.
And then I went to go get my youngest out of the bed to get them a leave because I'm obviously like we've now gotten to where this is turning into physical. I'm not going to deal with this. And my
Right.
youngest is soaking wet, and I'm asking my oldest, hey, what happened? And he said, oh, dad poured a bottle of water on him. And that was just kind of like my
Wow.
seriously, like, really, this is where we've gotten. So I left, and unfortunately, my family wasn't the most supportive at the time, and they talked me into going back because I did need to have my surgery. So I had already made up my mind I was going to get the surgery, get better, and then I was going to be gone. And I told him, I said, I just, we're done. I can't do this. After surgery, I get took that to her to full to be like, oh, she's incompetent, she's mentally unstable, she needs all this help. And then he took, because at the time we hadn't even been to the courts yet, and it was December of 2024. He was just doing like he was really invading my space with my friends, my family. Like he knew my every move to where I really started feeling like I was going crazy. And my biggest downfall there is I'm a chronic texter where I'm going to text you in multiple bubbles. And friends, I guess they thought they were trying to help, sent him a screenshot of messages that I sent. And he literally cropped it down to like one little bubble that said, I'm ending everything, tell my boys I tried. And he used that in emergency to say that I was trying to harm myself. And I was like, that's not even the context of that. Like, you didn't even put the whole conversation. You just cropped it down and ran with it.
Okay, so he cropped down a text message for court and he manipulated it to
Yeah.
mean something that it didn't, basically.
Yep. And then the hardest thing is the lawyer that he has is actually a family friend that, well, a family friend works for him as the paralegal. So he already had all of this like right there in his hands that he already knew what he was doing, how he was going to do it. And then the emergency hearing happened so quickly that I didn't even have time to try to obtain a lawyer or legal aid or anything if I wanted to because I had like 2 days to be like, okay, well, I got to do something.
Yeah.
That was
Wow.
definitely a
Okay.
big frustration.
That is very frustrating. And did you have money for an attorney?
No, I did not because at that time I was still recovering. I couldn't drive, I couldn't work. So it's kind of like I had nothing, no resources. I was like, this is great.
What
This
state are you
is,
from?
I'm from Georgia.
Georgia. Oh, yeah. Oh, Lord. Yes. I did an interview with a woman the other week and man, her story, I'm like, what is Georgia doing? Are you kidding me? Like it was just insane how she was treated. Um,
Yeah.
okay. So, first of all, okay, so you had a normal natural health need. You had a tumor. And so you
Yeah.
went to go get it taken care of, right? Which is what you're supposed to do. And he used that to obtain your children on an emergency basis. And you were a stay at home mom. And so you were directly enabling the income, but in practice, it was treated and allowed to be just his income. And he was able to obtain an expert, a lawyer, who could who first of all knew where he was, where he wanted to be, and the proper procedural path to get there. So he knew where he was, his substantive rights or what he wanted, right, which is outlined in statutory and case law, and the vehicle in which to get from where you are to where you want to be at your substantive rights is procedure, right? That's kind of like everybody knows that in the legal field, right? And so what he did was he had an attorney who knew the procedural rules, knew how to translate lived experience language to procedural language, which is a whole different language. It's attorneys are amazing at it. They're so skilled at it. And he was not being controlled. So he was not hyper vigilant, and all the natural things, just like if dust goes up your nose and you sneeze, right? When you are under power and control of somebody else, you present hypervigilant, etc., right? And then also, he didn't have his basic necessities and the threat of his children and a brain tumor. He didn't have all that going on. And so he wasn't hypervigilant. And he had an emotional buffer of an attorney on top of that, with the money that you were directly enabling as a stay at home mom. But all the money was under his control, which is exploitation by definition. It's not a hyperbolic term. It's by definition, that's what exploitation is. And so he was able to use that to get the kids. And what I don't understand is, okay, so yeah, you might need some support, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to be a mom. Like, you had a medical need. So let's make sure that he's supporting you with the kids so you can get your medical needs, but also let's make sure you're still in your children's lives. That's where I'm a little bit confused. I'm not sure how judicial discretion didn't sort of arrive at that conclusion. Um,
That's what really drives me crazy about it because I remember going into the emergency hearing and the children had been sick a couple days before. So I walked in that morning and I was sick because children, I didn't know I could ask for a continuance or anything like that.
right, because
So I
you
walked
didn't
in,
have
I
an
couldn't really,
attorney because he took all the money and you couldn't hire counsel. Keep going.
I walked in and I couldn't really say much, but I remember sitting there listening. Not once did they say that I was a stay at home mom. Not once did they say anything of relevance about their claim. There was nothing, oh, we did a welfare check, we called police, we didn't do, and then still sitting there in the courtroom, the judge still found it was in the best interest of my children to stay with their dad, but she thought she was giving me a win because I did end up getting a vehicle out of it because he tried to use the whole she doesn't have a car, she doesn't have any of this, and that's when the judge kind
But
of zoned in on
his
him and was like,
fault, because he didn't want you to. Sorry, keep going.
yeah.
Keep going.
And she looked at him and she was like, how much money do you make a year? And he just kind of sat back in his chair and was like, $90,000 a year, all cocky. And she looked at him and she goes, and she can't have a car? And he looked at her
Okay,
and
that's good.
he told her she didn't pay for one. And the judge looked shocked. She was like, are we for real right now? So he did agree to give me a car that has now later become weaponized because whenever he gave me the car, the tag was expired, so I couldn't drive it. It wouldn't pass mission, so I tried to file contempt based on what legal aid had advised me to do, and that completely backfired on me because I'm learning language and orders is very important because we have been operating under this temporary order for over a year and it cannot be enforced towards him because of how his attorney wrote it up. And now we have this whole issue again of the car tag is expired again. The car is breaking down. I'm doing everything I can to try to fix it, but because it's in his name, I'm extremely limited. And with the tag being expired, I now can't do my gig work. I can't do things I need to do. And because of the order being written so vaguely, he's untouchable. And I just like, really? Like, what is going on? And it took a year for me to even get an attorney through legal aid because they just didn't have the staff to be able to give somebody because they're like, your case is so complex because while I'm trying to navigate it on my own, his attorney is just piling on the filings. Like every time I assert my rights, here comes that contempt filing, here comes
Yep.
this filing. And I'm like,
Yes.
are we
Every time
serious
you
right now? Like,
assert your rights, he comes at you with, and so here's the thing, right? It's not complex, family court. Ensure both parties have equitable access so both parties can meaningfully participate in the process. This is the foundational thing that we need to insert, and don't hear anything else. Okay, you can send all the filings and we're going to table them and we're going to make sure both parties have equitable access. So, sir, it's in your best interest to ensure that she has equitable access because none of your other stuff is going to be heard until that is the case, until you comply. It's not hard. The system needs to um, approach this differently. anyways,
I think
I'm
we
not
were like,
criticizing you. I'm I am
yeah,
just
I told
you know,
you, I think we were like 6 months in that I started contacting attorneys before he did a bulk of his filings. And even then, I was talking to attorneys who were telling me, yeah, it's like $8,000 for a retainer, $10,000. And I'm like, where am I supposed to come up with this
yeah,
money? Because
yeah.
he has this attorney that a family friend works for,
Mhm.
and that's a whole like other thing. Like this attorney has crossed so many professional, ethical lines, and I'm telling the state bar about it, and they're just like, well, we can't really do anything about it. And I'm like, the paralegal is actively watching my children while he works overnight. He tried to use her as a witness against me for my mental health. And I'm like, how can she be a witness to my mental health when I'm not even around her?
Right. Right.
That
Well,
these attorneys are
and
like, we need thousands of dollars.
right. And which I totally understand that attorneys need to be compensated. They are skilled
Yeah.
experts and they need to be adequately compensated. And that is why the system needs to ensure that, consistent with law, that both parties have equitable access to the marital income so both parties can meaningfully participate in the process. Because right now, you cannot meaningfully participate. You cannot even hire an attorney when his side can, when you directly enabled his income. And so the marital, division of labor does not shift overnight. Now I understand he got an emergency, court order, but that's why there's alimony. That's why there's fee shifting. That's why there's child support, because you re-entering the workforce is not something that happens overnight. And so there needs to be a reasonable and responsible, properly phased transition plan. But what I am seeing and what we see every day in practice is that although that's what the law intends, the that's separate from the institutional norms and practices which don't operate on an evidence-based practice, which is what does the law intend, right? It operates on sort of tradition and norms and opinion. And that's where my whole crux of my thesis of my work lies, is that that's where harm happens and that's where systems fail individuals. So any stakeholders listening to this poor woman's story, I mean, do we see the issue here? Like, this is easily solvable, right? We need to really just examine our subconscious beliefs, examine, you know, what I mean, for me, this is simple. Ensure that both parties have equitable access to the income as a prerequisite for anything else so they can both meaningfully participate. And that includes, equitable access, whether it's a 60-40 split or a 50-50 split or 75-25, like, I don't know, right? And I know that we don't necessarily do it like percentages. I know here in Jersey, we have something called a case information statement, and you fill out all your needs on both sides. And of course, if there's money left over, it's an equitable split. It averages to a percentage, right? Is what I'm saying. Even though that's not how we approach it, when it's all said and done, there's a split, right? And so, but what it doesn't include is what your case is, which is probably all the money's on his side or 90% is on his side. That's not equitable, right? And so, and because that's the case, you cannot even participate in this process. And it's benefiting him while further entrenching you. And yeah, so just like stakeholders listening to this, I mean, this poor woman's story. I mean, this is what, if we continue, right, the definition of sanity, excuse me, is if we keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. I mean, that's not going to happen. And so this is what I see day in and day out in my work, and this is what's going to continue to keep happening, right? So we really need to make a change. Um,
And the craziest thing about it is we were together for 12 years, but we have never actually officially got married because I thought it was safer that way. Because the way Georgia is if you're not married, the father has no right. So I figured, okay, we're not married, I'm safe. That was not the case. Like when they did the legitimation, I always said, I'm not going to fight you. These are your children. Well, I agreed in open court. I was like, yes, they are his children. But whenever his attorney sent the orders over, he combined everything in one order. And I refused to sign it because there was language in there that I didn't agree with. Well, he turned around, sent it to the judge as two separate orders saying that I refused to sign it. So they wrote where I was supposed to sign it on the legislation, agreed to an open court instead of my signature. And I was like, I didn't even know you could do that. Like, that's wild to me. And that's what kind of opened the door to him having all of these rights and starting to cut me out of everything. And it's like every time I try to assert my rights, it's motions. And that's the biggest thing with the card. Like, I now have an attorney through legal aid. And she was like, I'm going to be honest, we have never seen a judge order a car in a legitimation case like this. Like, you're not married. We don't know how to handle it. And I'm like, that's a problem. Even
Well,
unmarried
I guess
mothers, we
that was one good result of discretion, right? The car. That was one good use of discretion there.
just more issues, like just how his attorney, and I never would have thought you would have to be so careful with how orders are written,
Yeah.
because if they're not written just right, there's a big gray area that opens up, and that's what I'm
Well, how
fighting.
would you know? You're not an attorney, right? But you brought something up, so you're not married. I actually didn't know that. I should have asked before I assumed things. I wonder, in Georgia, is there common law marriage? And if so, I mean, you might not know this, but common law marriage, is there a common law marriage and how long do you have to be together?
I'm not sure. I know I heard some people say something about it and it had to be like 10 years, but I'm not sure if Georgia does it or not. I will definitely have to ask my attorney about it and be like, "Hey, do you know anything about this?"
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's common law marriage. Let me just, I don't know, let me ask Dr. Google really quick. It's not really the best source, but that's quickly what we have now. Okay, is there
It it like quickly
common
works, and
law marriage in Georgia? No,
oh,
no, since 97. That's what Google's saying. Okay, never mind. But yeah, ask your
oh,
attorney. I mean, Google could be wrong.
definitely ask her.
So okay, but still, I mean, this highlights a broader like issue. Like even though you're not married, I mean, I know that we prioritize having attorneys in criminal law, right? Because it takes away your freedom, but I don't know. I feel like family court, we're talking about money and children and money, right? And so I feel like I feel like the system needs to do better if
Okay.
oh man, I just feel like both sides should be able to have an attorney. Um, but I know that they view it as that's everybody's, own responsibility. But I feel like, no discretion can and should be used, for if you were a stay-at-home mom and you guys functioned as a married couple. I mean, you have a right to be a mom and your children have a right to be with you. So anyways, okay. So basically when you start to assert your rights, that's when all of the litigation abuse comes. And this is how coercive control works, right? So when you start to break free of the coercive control
And they
psychologically,
start
physically,
trying to
etc.
hit you with whatever they can.
Right, it just switches levers and it gets worse. That's the thing that I'm trying to really help the cultural zeitgeist, understand and sort of rethink and think differently on is that just like because everyone's like, well, just set boundaries psychologically or physically, and it's like it doesn't work that way. They're going to find another lever, and it's
It's
just going
not
to keep
that
getting worse, and
easy.
it
Like,
doesn't
it's
end
not that
until
easy. They will find another way.
right. And it doesn't end
Um,
until the target's life. And I know I'm not trying to like scare you, but it's very serious, like, ends, not in every case, but, and that's where I'm trying to get, the stakeholders to understand this is very serious. This is not just, oh, well, no, this is very serious. And the only thing that interrupts these coercive controllers is when institutions interrupt them because they don't respect you. And that has nothing to do with your worth. I respect you because I am a healthy person, right? But these coercive
Yeah.
controllers, they don't respect us, right? They look at us like we are nothing, right? And so that's where people in positions of authority, they are tasked with interrupting them because that's the only people they listen to. So anyway, so so we talked about what financial coercive control looked like in your day-to-day life, and we talked about how it did not change. It got worse when separation.
Lovers.
And so the next section that we would go into is system entry. So procedural demands versus constrained capacity. Now, we already sort of gotten into this part of the conversation, but let me just, kind of establish the framing, backtracking a little bit here, and then we can talk a little bit more about it if we've missed anything. So, this next section focuses on what it was like to enter the family court system while already dealing with financial and emotional strain. The court often expects, and I touched upon this a bit, but let me just reiterate, repetition never hurt anybody. So, the court often expects people to be organized, clear, and able to advocate for themselves. But many people enter the system who are targets of coercive control under conditions that make that extremely difficult, if not impossible. And in many cases, this means people are expected to meet procedural demands after financial coercive control has already limited their capacity to do so, right? So, like I was talking about, like financial coercive control limited your ability to even ensure basic necessities and to hire an attorney on your side. So, but they expect you to be able to have your basic necessities met and to have an attorney, but that's what financial coercive control has taken away your capacity to do, right? And so we talked about what your situation was like financially and emotionally when you first entered the family court system, that you did not have access to money for basic needs. And we talked about how you were functioning. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that specifically?
Distinctly remember the first time we went in front of our actual judge, that's like the judge of our entire case. I remember him telling everybody, I highly encourage everybody to have an attorney. And I just remember sitting there going, I understand you encourage it, but I've tried everything. And I think that's one thing that is a very misunderstood thing with everybody's like, oh, there's all these resources. It's like, yeah, there are these resources, but the resources don't have enough funding availability or whatever it is to actually be able to help everyone. And that was one of the things that I ran into a roadblock the most with was, oh, we don't have any funding. There's a wait list. There's just not enough to go around. And it's like it took legal aid a year to even be able to assign me an attorney because they're like, we don't have anybody because they're all tied up with other things.
Right.
That's a big
Yeah.
misconception. Yes, the resources are there, but if they're not funded and they're not taken care of, they're operating on a very small capacity of what they could do.
Yeah, exactly. That is a really big misconception. People think like we have all these resources, that women have all these resources, and no, it's not that simple. Number one, number two, um, you're very limited. Like if the resource is going to be coercively controlling towards you and abusive towards you too, it's kind of like you're stuck in another abusive relationship too. That's something that I find in my work as well, and is actually really near and dear to my heart in the nonprofit world. Um, you know, is we need to make sure that we are not being coercively controlling to our clients because we're the only people that they can work with many times because they don't have the resources to go outside. And that's where again it's kind of like whether you're married or not, like if the other side wants to fund litigation, well, they should be responsible for making sure that you have access to an attorney too. He created kids with you. You were a stay-at-home mom. You functioned like a marriage. Like, come on, we can't just leave stay-at-home moms to be left out to be high, be high and dry. Like, okay, so you didn't get married, like, so you should now have your have not have your rights to have your kids. And anyways, okay, so you weren't able to get a lawyer until a year in. And so, were you able to understand what you were supposed to do in court? And if not, what made that difficult? So, before you were able to get an attorney and then after you got an attorney, were you able to understand what you were supposed to do in court? It sounds like no,
A
especially in the
bit,
beginning. Yeah, go ahead.
like a little bit to where I was able to I spent like it got to the point to where his attorney started saying, "Oh, you're using AI, you're using ChatGPT," and it's like, no, I actually kind of dove headfirst into the law library and I started
And so
looking
what if
into
you
other
were?
cases.
And so what if you were? What were you
And
supposed
I
to do?
started
But go ahead.
looking Yeah, and I started looking into other cases and the law books and putting together pieces, and it's like, yes, if I needed to know how do I say something, I would go to ChatGPT and be like, how do I say this in my filing?
Right.
And
Mhm.
I started putting together my own filings to kind of like try to tell my story of like, hey, this is what he did because everything that I was doing was being turned around on me. Like
Right.
I had lost
Yeah.
my housing in October because my mom is a drunk. I hate to say it. God, that's so
She
rude, but
suffers from
it's
alcohol
what
use
it is.
disorder. Yeah.
Yeah, she
In a
suffers from
system
alcohol
that
use,
doesn't
and
even
we had an
understand the
incident.
in a system that does not understand from an evidence-based perspective. That's actually my first subject matter expertise. I'm like so passionate about it because you want to talk about practice-based instead of evidence-based approach to something. Talk about alcohol recovery. The system does not understand the true root cause of alcohol addiction from an evidence-based perspective, and they do not make known and widely available the evidence-based solutions that adequately address the root cause of alcohol addiction. And it's actually very easy to recover from. I know I'm going to get hate, and you are willing, listeners, to disagree with me. I'm actually a survivor myself of alcohol addiction in a system that didn't work for me for nearly 10 long years, no matter what I did and how hard I tried. It wasn't until I became a social researcher that I dove head deep into the research, learned what the actual root cause was from a science perspective, had to fight to implement evidence based solutions. But I got better in 3 months and I've been recovered ever since. And actually, I have a choice in my recovery whether I want to be a quote
Beautiful.
unquote normal drinker or if I want to be sober, but without the obsessive and strong cravings for alcohol all day, every day. Behold the power of an evidence based approach. So I know people always say, oh, your message is so dangerous. And I'm like, no, actually, not saying my message is actually what's
It's
dangerous.
true.
Keeping the traditional approach of my way or the highway, the traditional approach, that's actually what's dangerous. Because you know what I do? I advocate for the traditional approach to be known and available, and also the evidence-based approach to be made known and available. And what the traditional folks do is they say, no, it has to be our way or the highway. That's coercive control. And they don't advocate for the options or whatever. So, anyways, I'm sorry. I'm like going on and on and on.
It's
But yes, so
never
she
given.
suffers
No,
in a culture that doesn't even approach it. Like they set people up for failure. And it's really, really sad. So yes, your mom suffers from
can't commit.
alcohol use disorder. No judgment
Yeah,
here. Shame
alcoholism
free.
and we yeah,
Yeah.
and, there was an incident in the home because I was living with her, and she was already a piece that was used against me in the court filings is they tried to say, "Oh, her and her mom don't get along, but yet she's living with her mom." And at the time, my mom was not living in her own house. Her and my stepdad were in another house,
Yeah.
and I was just using her house with my aunt as, like, my safe landing place to get back up on my feet. But an
Right.
incident had occurred in October that I was kind of like, your drinking has really hit a point to where I don't want my kids around it. I don't want me around it. Like, it ended up with her being arrested and then
Yeah.
illegally changed locks on me. And I filed something with the court, letting the courts know, hey, I've had to move. This has happened. And within like 24 hours, I had an email from his attorney in my inbox saying, it's my understanding that you're homeless, like trying to turn it around on me. And I'm like, are
All
we
while you're
really doing
trying to
this right
recover
now?
from a brain tumor. This can't be good for your brain
Yes.
tumor.
I'm still like, it got to the point to where I couldn't even open my email because it was like,
Yeah.
what's gonna be waiting? Like, what's the next email? What's
Yeah.
coming next? Because it was just so much.
Yeah.
And it was like
I'm
I
so
felt like I was
sorry.
under a microscope that everything was going to be flipped around and used against me. And it's like I can't even simply live my life without looking over my shoulder going, what's gonna happen? And now that I did finally get assigned as an attorney through legal aid, she's trying to take the next steps of, hey, let's start negotiations, let's try and the other side has completely fallen silent now. Like, he was so quick to turn things around on me, fire back on me, that now it's like, okay, we're just gonna stall and we're gonna drag this out. And I'm like, really? Like, really? It just feels like it's
Litigation
never
abuse.
ending.
Yeah, litigation abuse. It's awful. And so, um, did you ever feel like okay, so, all right, so all right, so it seems like
There's a
you
lot
really
there.
it is a lot, and it's so emotional to hear about because I personally resonate with your story about not, being scared to check your email, literally a personal connection there. And yeah, it's a whole mess, and there's so many thoughts in my head, and I'm also trying to not be emotionally charged, and I'm trying to be professional. But so okay, so before you got an attorney, and then also thinking about the fact that you're still in this situation, and I'm talking to you here, and anyways, I'm sorry. Um, so anyways, I'm sorry. Yeah, and so I just got a text message that distracted me. I'm sorry. And so okay, so before you got an attorney, you really did not understand what was going on, and it sounds like now that you have an attorney, you kind of understand a little bit better what's going on.
A little bit. We're still trying to undo everything that his attorney may not have and may not
You know what? You're cutting out.
understand.
Let's try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think
Is
so.
it
Let's try
still?
again. It was very blurry when you were just answering me. Can you try again? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, his attorney took full advantage of me not knowing anything, not having representation, and like ran full force with it to where it just made such a giant mess.
Yeah. Yep. Took advantage of you not being an attorney. That attorney, man. Oh. Okay.
He's
So
a slimy fellow. Like, he's not a good one. Like, he's good for his client, I guess you could say, but not. I wouldn't categorize him as a good person. Like, how can you do this to somebody?
that's the thing. Like, is he good for his client? Well, I guess if he wants to help his client maintain power and control, but I just feel like, is that the goal? Is the goal to have power? Well, yeah, I mean, I guess so. It's an adversarial system, the court system, but that's the thing. It's family court. Maybe it shouldn't be an adversarial system. Anyway, it should. I mean, the well-being of the children should be what it should be about, and maybe, yeah, okay, we need to reimagine family court. But okay. So, did you ever feel like the court misunderstood what you were going through? For example, seeing you as unprepared, unstable, less credible, while the other person was seen as more put together and credible? Did you ever feel like, yeah, did you ever feel like the family court really misunderstood you because you were hyper vigilant, for example, while they weren't because
Yes,
they had
I feel like
counsel?
I was really discredited because I didn't have that attorney sitting next to me.
Mm,
Even though I had like a whole binder full of screenshots that I had categorized into different things, and I started keeping a visitation log because our agreement, our temporary order says that we have visitation as agreed, and if we cannot agree, then it defaults to every weekend, starting after school on Fridays to 3 p.m. on Sundays. And that's caused a whole whirlwind of stuff that I've just been documenting. And as I was rewriting the log to keep it current and link things for my attorney, I started realizing there was only 1 month that there was not an issue with the pickup or drop off because of the wording of the order. And it kind of goes back into, we don't know what we're reading. Like, we read it like we see it, but the court sees it completely different. It's like when you try to enforce that, it doesn't really go well, and it's almost like they're put in this bulletproof box because of how orders are written, and we don't know any better because we're not attorneys.
right, right. Um, Have you seen your kids since?
I do get them every weekend, but since the tag has expired, he has to bring them, so I'm kind of at his mercy of whenever he feels like showing up on Fridays and Sundays, and it's been a really hard thing because my oldest has level 1 autism and ADHD, and I've had to step in and try to help him as much as I can, and he's really struggling because they wanna see mom, they wanna be with mom, they wanna be able to talk to mom, and dad's just like, "No," like, he just wants them for him, like, they're just like a prize to him, I guess, that it's like, "Oh, look at me, the dad, but don't look at what I'm doing behind the scenes," and that's the most frustrating part about it is he turns on this charm in court for his attorney, for everybody else, but whenever it turns off, it's like, he's not who like, he's living a double
Right.
life, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"This is not great."
That's what they do. They have a mask for court and for outsiders, but then they'll drop it for you, the target, which is you and your children or whatever, right? Because yeah, it's okay. So I mean, are you able to go back to court with your attorney now to get the temporary order changed where he has to drop them off and pick them up?
She's definitely trying to work that, but she said that, her issue is she doesn't want to push too hard with the car issue because we're not married and she's never seen this. She's like, "I've never seen a judge order property like this." And it's like, well, how do we fix it? And in the meantime, I'm steadily getting calls from the school about, my oldest being dysregulated, needing support, and I'm sending all this to my attorney, but we're hitting a wall because his attorney won't respond, won't do anything. So now they're just kind of like stalling. And it's like they switched gears from we're going to continue to go after her
Yeah,
and make her look crazy
you
to
didn't have representation, so they were on super offense, and now you have representation, so now they're going to delay. It's a different sort of tactic to exert power and
they're like,
control
"Oh,
over
we're
you.
just gonna delay and hope that she gives up." And it's like,
This
I'm
kind of
not giving up.
attorney
My
should
kid
be
deserves
disbarred or brought up on heavy disciplinary action. And I thank you for sharing your story about that because part of my work is to train professionals, and I can tell you right now, I'm very sorry that you went through this and that you're going through this. And it is definitely an inspiration for the education because I'm working with the Bar Association here in New Jersey and in the different counties. And so I'm happy to expand to Georgia. So notice to that attorney. Um,
I'm like, he's did so much and he's unethical. The biggest thing I can't understand is
oh no, you're
why
cutting out.
are
Hold on.
legal. So
Let's try that over. I didn't hear anything you just said because you were cutting out. Let's try again.
I was saying that's the big thing I don't understand. He's a paralegal, has known us for years. She's a family friend. She has seen how he truly is with the kids, how he is with me. She's seen the control and everything, but yet she's still involved in the court filings. He even tried to use her as a witness against me, and I'm like, "How is that allowed?" And then when I filed with the board about conflict of interest, they said, "Oh, we don't see anything here." I'm like, "How?" Like, she sees his client every single day. She's keeping my children while he works overnights because they think that I can't take care of them. She has blocked my number to where I can't even have contact with my children throughout the week. And I'm just like, they think it's no big deal. And I'm like, how is that not a big deal?
So okay, so the issue is that the registration is expired.
Yes, it will. The car, it's a very old car and it has some fixes that need to be done with the emissions.
Right.
And he is just straight refusing to do it. So I put my own money into trying to fix it, but it's gotten to the point where it's like, this car isn't even in my name. Like, you could come take this back at any point, and I'm just out that money. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm kind of battling is he's using the car being expired and me not having a way to go as another lever to, oh, well, you got an attorney. Well, guess what? I'm not going to cooperate. You're not going to be able to work. You're still under my control.
He said you're not going to be able to work.
Yeah, because I do gig work because after my brain surgery, my left side has a lot of weakness. So I'm trying to get PT and OT to kind of get that done because I just realized it a couple
Are
months
you
ago.
able
I
to
went to
get
go
disability? Are you applying for disability?
I'm fixing to apply for disability because I noticed a couple months ago that I went to go do something like button my son's shirt and I couldn't do it. And I went to tie his shoe and I was like, I can't do it because my left side. And I'm
Right.
trying to get
So are you
disability, get
applying for
PT.
disability?
Yes.
You are. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
All right.
doing that while I'm also trying to get OT, PT to kind of like get myself going. So in the meantime, I have DoorDash, Amazon Flex, but without having the car running, I don't have an income. And it's like he's now trying to use that against me to where, oh, she can't even provide. I can't provide for the kids because of the obstacles you are throwing at me that you are creating to use
Yeah, but
against me.
that's why there's disability that exists and there's SNAP benefits and there's Medicaid to help people who are in a hard time in their life because they have a disability. It's not like you're choosing to just sit there and not work. And so how is the disability application going? Is it making, I mean, is it in?
I've
Is it
submitted
doing
it.
well?
I've submitted it. I think they're reviewing it. I did it a couple weeks ago and I haven't heard anything back yet. So I'm hoping that soon I will be able to get that.
And
And
so
that's just something
courts
I've kind of been,
courts work on plans, right? And so this is not legal advice, this is information for informational purposes. Go take this to your attorney, but courts work on plans. So you have a plan in place and you have a doctor
yeah,
validating everything you're saying that you cannot
mhm,
necessarily get full-time work. Yes?
yeah.
Okay. And so you have a doctor, all right, saying that. So it's not just you saying, "Oh, I can't work," right? No, it's you have a
No,
well
I have a
documented from
doctor,
a
I have
licensed
an OT
professional.
evaluation,
Right. So you have
physical
what you need
therapy
on that front.
evaluation.
And courts work on plans, right? So it's not that you're just sitting on your hands doing nothing. Like you
No,
actually applied for disability, which is you trying to fix the situation in the circumstances you're in. So courts work on plans. So I'm hoping that your attorney is neutralizing that claim that he's made with no, she is doing what she can under the constraints that she's under. So I hope they're framing that properly for you. And then now, when it comes to seeing your children, um, I would hope that he would want to promote a relationship between you and your children because that is what the court wants to see and that's his responsibility. So I'm hoping that your attorney is also framing that properly for you as well. He needs to step up and he needs to do what he needs to make sure that his children have a relationship with their mother. And if he's not, then I think that needs to be properly pointed out and framed for the court because
she
that's an
is
indication that
definitely,
he's not trying to promote
she,
a relationship.
yeah, she definitely is doing that because a big thing that I've documented that I've helped her with is text messages because for Christmas I bought my 10-year-old phone. Now I didn't want to. Like I totally agree with his dad. 10-year-olds don't need smartphones. Like it just opens up a whole world. But it was like I was constantly facing these barriers of the caregiver blocked me. Their dad answers the phone whenever he feels like it, and then whenever I do get to
And we're
talk to my
documenting
kids,
that, right? We're documenting that.
they feel uncomfortable. Huh?
You're
I'm sorry.
documenting
What was
that,
that?
right? You're
Yes.
documenting date, what happened, the pattern it falls under, and how it affected you and the
That's
children.
what I've been sending all to my attorney, and so I bought the phone, and I told my ex, I was like, it's only to contact me when he's with you when he's with me. Like I've told him, I don't want him on social media. We're not doing all this. Like that's not what this phone is for. Because I
Right.
knew that was going to be his dad's biggest argument of, he doesn't need help. Well, he was originally okay with the phone coming home. And then all of a sudden, his dad got really paranoid. It was like, oh, your mom's using the phone to spy on me. She's doing all this. And it's like, that's not what I got the phone for. Like, I don't care what you're doing over there. And then there was an incident where I found out that Eli had called me and he was talking and him and his brother were fighting. And I'm listening as they're fighting and I'm going, okay, surely their dad's going to step in. He's going to hear them in a minute. He never steps in and I'm listening and the fight is escalating and I'm trying over the phone to get them to calm down. And finally I just asked them, I said, you know what? Where is your dad? Like, where's your dad at? And they told me, they're like, oh, he's at the gym. I'm like, he's not there. And they're like, no, it's just us. He's not here. And then that's whenever I was like, okay, well, y'all stop fighting for a minute. I'm going to call your dad, find out where he is. And he didn't answer. So I texted him. I said, hey, the kids told me you're not home. They're fighting. Like, what's going on? And that was like the final straw for the phone, that he was like, it doesn't come back to my house. And it's like, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, why can't he have the phone? And then he's always telling me, well, you have to go through me. And I actually emailed my attorney some things last night that she emailed me this morning, saying that we need to clearly define that we still have joint legal custody and what that means, because Brandon is treating it as if I don't have any rights to my
What do you
children when
mean?
I
Do you
very
still
much
have
do.
joint legal custody? What does the last court order say? Do you have it or not?
Like, it definitely says I do. It just granted their dad temporary physical custody, and that's why she's like, we need to clarify, you still have all of your rights, because they're operating as if I don't, and I very much do.
Well, so they can. Sorry, we have a special guest appearance from spring break over here in this household. Okay. He likes to make noises. I don't know why. He has a good time in his own head. He can't hear the conversation though because he has his earbuds on and I have my earbuds on. Okay. So, but that's the thing. So just because he's not operating under what the court order says doesn't mean the court order, it doesn't mean that we have to make sure that we no, it's whatever the last court order says. Now, if he's not acting in compliance with the court order, then he's not in compliance with the court order. That's not your problem. That's your side's problem to point out, but it doesn't change what the court order says. The court order says what the court order says. I'm a bit confused by your attorney's framing on that with you. But irregardless, that's something for you to obviously
We're
sort of
just it,
clarify with your attorney. But the court, what the court
it
order
just
says
goes
is what the
back
court
to
order says. Now, it might be an issue of non-compliance on his side, but that doesn't change what the court order says. Does that make sense?
yeah. The issue that we're running into is his attorney wrote the court order in such a vague manner, because it's through my own research, I've learned that these temporary orders like that are only technically to what they call stop the bleed.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, hey, we're going to stabilize the situation, then you need to come back.
What does it say about who has what does it say about legal custody? Does it say joint legal? Yes or no?
It says nothing. It just says that he has temporary physical custody.
Okay. So there's no court
Which is
order that
enough.
addresses the legal custody component. Yes or no?
No.
No. Okay. Now it says that he has temporary physical custody. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like the court did not address the legal custody, and so that's.
No.
I mean, this stuff is very simple. Like I'm not. I'm not yelling at you. I'm just saying, like, I feel like sometimes it's like way more complicated than what it is. Like, attorney, go back to court, address legal custody and physical custody, right? It's very simple. And both parents have a right to be in that child's life. And so you have a right to be in that child's life. And so if he needs to drop off the kids and pick them up because you have a medical need, which is bleeding into your financial constraints, but you're doing something about that, like you have an active plan, then I'm sorry, it's on him to, do that for a little bit if he wants to promote a relationship for the children to have you in his life. And if he doesn't, then I think that says a lot. And that's where I think judicial discretion needs really see what's happening. But who knows? I'm just one opinionated, nonprofit
No,
founder,
I
award
totally
winning
agree with
nonprofit
you.
founder, mind you. I have credibility and, someone who has my own consulting practice and a podcast host or whatever. But that's just, take my advice with a grain of salt. But I just think these things are much simpler, and these coercive controllers try to make them so complicated, and I have no tolerance for it. I just don't have a tolerance, as you could probably see. Like,
I don't either. But I'm like, somebody understands it. And I don't know if you've heard the term, but when I was doing consultations with attorneys, one told me when I was explaining the situation, he said, oh, they pulled a silver bullet method on you. And I asked him, I said, what does that mean? He said, it's a silver bullet method is where they latch on to one thing, call for an emergency hearing, strip your custody, get a vague order, and then they exploit that vague order and they never take it back to court for more structured orders or anything. And that's kind of where I've been stuck. And it's like my attorney is having to enter in and try to structure it. And now that she wants to structure it, they have fallen silent. They're like, oh no, we want to keep it as is, even though it's clearly not working. He doesn't want to promote a relationship with me, with the kids, and he's
So let's bring it
constantly
back to
bad-mouthing me
court.
to the children.
Let's file a motion.
That's what
Let's file a motion. I
that's where
mean,
we're at with it.
yeah. So let's do
She's
it.
like, let's try to reach out to him, and then she's like, if this doesn't work, then we're gonna go back to
Reach out
court.
to him. Try to
And
avoid court. The court likes when you do that. They like to try to work things out. The problem is that it's never going to work because his goal is power and control, right? It's not. It's actually
yeah,
not to work things out. But do it. Check the box. Whatever. And then let's gear up a motion in the background and let's go. Let's full court press. Like let's go. You know what I mean? Like I'm not talking to you. I'm just saying. Like I'm just
yeah,
kind of
no,
like I don't have tolerance for all this stuff.
no, me either. So I'm just kind
I'm
of
just
sitting
like,
here, and
let's
I'm
get him
like,
and get him hard. Let's go. Like shut this down immediately. I don't have tolerance for it. Like it's ridiculous. I don't like, I don't like, I don't like when people try to have power and control over other people. It's okay. I'm going to stop talking. Okay. I'm
yeah, no,
sorry. I'm
that's
just
one thing with
mad
this.
for you. I'm mad for you and I'm mad for your
No,
kids.
I'm mad. I'm mad too because I'm like, really, like, and my attorney is mad, but I'm also having to realize, she's walking into a year of chaos created by the other side. So I'm
Yeah.
like, we need to have some patience and let her sort through and figure out. But I feel pretty confident that she's very quickly caught on and seen
Good.
he's not gonna
Good.
cooperate with us. We're gonna have to escalate this. So she
Yep.
did ask me how I felt about now that I have representation. How do I feel about going back to mediation? I told her, I said, if you feel like it could successfully be mediated, I will. But I told her, I said, last time mediation was brought up, his attorney was going for the most expensive mediator that was like $400 an hour that
Good. And
we
he
have
can
to
pay
split the
for it since
cost
he
of.
has
And
the funds on his side, right? And we will go for a
yeah, we
limited
have to like
scope.
split
And
the
if he
cost. And I'm
can't,
like, if he drags this out, that's a lot of money that I don't have.
right. And so he can pay for it, right? And if
Yeah.
he uh, put a limited time on it, right? You have to create a boundary over how much time you're willing to engage in this mediation to try to come to a solution. Let him pay for it. And if you guys can't come to, a solution that works for both of you in a specific reasonable time limit, let's just go to court. Like, let's just go, it's like you got to put boundaries and a cap on these things with them. And then you follow through with that cap and boundary. And you know that they're not going to, um, they're not going to try to come to a solution. So, just in the background, prepare the motion and then go and go hard. Like, let's just go, it's part of the game. It's part of the strategy with these people. And, yeah, you just have to have a really tough, mindset of, okay, this is a situation, this is my position on it, and state it over and over, and I'm not moving. This is my position. You have to be tough as nails with these people. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
hard
something
going.
I gently reminded my attorney of is whenever they first brought up mediation, it got screened out due to domestic violence. And I remember when they sent the screening form, that was kind of my first moment of, okay, this is real. Like, this isn't in my head. Because I remember looking at the screening form and it was like 10 questions.
Mm-hmm.
And most people would think nothing of it. But as I'm reading them, I'm literally going in my head, I can answer yes to every single one of these. Even though he never physically hurt me, I could still answer yes to every single one of these. It was questions like, do you feel comfortable being in the same room with them? Do they get mad when things don't go their way? What
Yeah.
happens? And I'm reliving all of these years. I'm going, this is real. So I
Yeah. Well,
did
because
gently remind her that if
well,
you
because
feel like we
that's
can,
not how domestic abuse works. The old model is an incident based, physical based model. The new model is domestic abuse. And it's not incident based, it's a pattern. where the perpetrator seeks to have power and control over their target. And it can manifest through multiple different levers, whether that's physical, but most likely not, because they want to keep their image intact to the public. They don't want to be held accountable. And because the culture really recognizes physical violence as domestic abuse, they're more likely than not always, but more likely than not to be held accountable, right? And so that's where the psychological and the litigation and the even sexual with co-parenting and custody issues, like they start to pull all these other levers to have the power and control manifest. And so when you were going through those questions, it was probably very validating for you, right? And good for that questionnaire that recognize that you are an individual who is experiencing domestic abuse. So, but it's interesting that that was a realization for you. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but because it's like I feel like the cultural zeitgeist, right? Just what people widely believe and accept as truth and what something is still needs to catch up to it. But sorry, I interrupted you. I just wanted to interject with that, but keep going.
I did remind her, hey, it was screened out because of domestic violence. And I reminded her that the final straw, whenever I did leave their father, was there was an incident where he completely smashed my phone. Like I was trying to call 911 because it was reaching a point where I felt uncomfortable. And I didn't find out until like 6 months after the incident that filing a warrant was even a possibility. So I was able to do that. We got a hearing. The warrant was granted. And I just remember his reaction in the courtroom. Like he didn't do anything crazy or anything like that. I just remember he immediately got out his phone. He was texting, and I was just watching his body language. And it was like I clammed up because it's like, I know how it is. It's like, even though he didn't destroy anything, he just like he shoved himself back and got up out of the courtroom, triggered something with me. And then I got up to leave, and I look over at my boyfriend that was with me, and he's pointing at the bailiff who's telling me, sit down, take a minute, sit down, because they could see that I was in distress. I just really, and I reminded her, based on how that went, I don't really feel comfortable being in the same room as him.
Yeah.
Should something not go how he wants to.
Right. You were triggered. You had a natural human response to being traumatized by somebody. So it's like putting dust up somebody's nose and then wondering why they're sneezing. It's the same thing with a trauma response with somebody who has subjected you to domestic abuse, and quite frankly, is still subjecting you to domestic abuse. So it's just the legal process now and co-parenting and stuff of that nature. And there's a case for financial as well. And it all sort of intersects these different types of abuses that you're being subjected to right now. So, okay. So, yeah. So, I just want to say that I know that I come off very, tough when I'm talking about this stuff. And I just want to clarify that my toughness is against the, abuse. And, it's, um, I'm sorry, it's against the abuse and the person perpetrating the abuse.
Um,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
it's mom life. You always got to keep your eyes on them.
Yeah, right. I was like, okay, can we stay upstairs? Okay, thank you. I'm almost done. And we were going to get another guest appearance from the other person's home from spring break. Okay. No, so I just want to clarify that before when I was talking, it was not towards you, my toughness. It was towards the abuser and the system that doesn't stop it. I'm not a person who's all soft and the kid gloves, and I'm very like, oh, let's go fight, or whatever. Let's fight.
You got to be when you're dealing with people.
Oh, you're cutting out. Try to say that again.
I was saying you kind of have to be when you're dealing with situations like this. They don't really leave you any room to be nice.
Yes. But I want you to know that my demeanor was not towards you or any other individual experiencing it. It is because,
It's the situation.
yeah, Yeah. And maybe I developed it when I went through my own situation. And it's just how I do this work. But I always wonder if I'm being a little bit too tough with people who have lived experience. But or maybe it's just who I am and how God's created me, and maybe I should make no apologies. But I just never want anybody who has lived experience to experience me as coming after them. And so I like to preface that if I feel like I've gotten sorry, I have some tears if I'm
And
a little
like
bit
I
too
did not
like,
feel I did not feel like you were coming after me. Like I can feel the same frustration that I feel. It's like we're screaming into a void. Like this is what's going on. And it's like nobody's hearing us. It's very frustrating.
yeah. Yep. So good. I'm glad you didn't take it that way. So I just wanted to preface that. um, okay, so the final section, procedural outcomes and cascading consequences from short-term harm to long-term entrenchment. Um, so basically, this section focuses on what happens when financial coercive control is not interrupted once the legal process begins. What may appear temporary on paper, which is what we've covered here, right, can create compounding and long term effects in real life. And so we've talked about this already, but let's just kind of see if we missed anything. So I'd like to understand both the immediate impact and what followed over time. Again, we've talked about it, but let's see if we missed anything. So once the legal process began, how did the financial situation affect your day to day life, including things like food, housing, transportation, medical care, child care, or your ability to stay stable? And again, I've said this like 3 times, my third time saying in the last minute, but I know we've covered this. But is there anything else that you think we missed that you'd like to share that you think is important to contribute to this part of the conversation?
I don't think so. I think the biggest thing I could tell somebody is whenever you do leave, apply for the benefits. Like that's what they're there for. They're there to help you. That's what I did, and that's how I was able to get insurance again for my own self for me to pay for therapy. I was able to get food stamps to be able to feed myself. Like it can be a little embarrassing, but they're there to help you. And if you have that resource, that's going to be something that's going to come back and it's going to help you show that, hey, you do have a plan. You are doing something to help yourself and you're not just sitting around waiting for the courts to come in and save you.
Yeah, I have a unique perspective because I am I'm a fiscal conservative, but I'm not a fiscal conservative that does not believe in social programs for people who literally like are disabled and can't take care of themselves, like disabled, elderly, or but even also like single moms and temporary medical conditions and stuff of that nature. Like those are people who need the help temporarily, and so I'm actually somebody that believes in those social programs. But we need to be careful because we can't have them like inflated too much, but we also need to make sure that we are taking care
Like
of our most
they
vulnerable and
said the
marginalized.
stepping like they're there to like it's forever. It's just get you from here to there to where eventually you don't need it anymore. Like it's just
Yes,
your
yes.
stepping stone to stability.
Exactly. And so I am totally a proponent to that. So I never fit anywhere, on the spectrum of my stance because I'm always like in the middle, leaning on one side for this, the other side for this, but then I lean to the other side as well for the same issue, and then I lean over here for the same issue. It's like I don't have a home, But yeah, so I just
Yes, no,
yeah, I totally agree with you. Uh, and we don't want to stay on government programs like forever because who wants to
no,
do that? I
you
mean,
just use it for your stepping stone to
stepping stone. Yep. So
get
I
to where
totally
you
agree
need
with
to be.
that.
Like it's okay in the moment to ask for help, receive help, and then continue to better yourself. Because that's what I was telling my attorney. I was like, I have all these things going on in the background that I'm trying to actively work on myself to get out of this. Like I'm not just waiting for the courts to be like, "Oh, he's wrong. We're gonna fix." Because you can't do that. Like the courts aren't gonna come save you. I hate to say it, and I know that sounds terrible, but that's one thing I've realized through this. The courts are not coming to save you. Whenever you get one, it's not. It's a very slow, painful process, and you have to doing your work.
Yeah. Which that's the hard part because it's like you shouldn't have to like be in a position where the courts come save you. It's like you have rights and we need to stop this temporary stuff. We need to have a cap on the temporary stuff and we need courts to decide on rights and immediately because that's where the abuse happens is in the temporary phase. It's like a coercive controller's playground. So yeah, so physical conservative, I'm a social libertarian, do what you want, just don't hurt people. Yeah, anyways, but with this kind of situation, man, does my liberal side come out, right? Because it's like I view everything that's happening as a civil rights issue of our time, for women. Now, have we made a lot of headway? Yes, but women still have, in effect, regardless of intention, physical, I'm sorry, in effect, civil rights issues where they're suffering breaches of their civil rights in effect, regardless of intent. Okay, so did the financial imbalance affect your ability to show up in court or make your case? And did that begin to impact other areas of your life over time, such as custody, parenting time, stress, or your overall stability? And I think we have answered this, and the answer is yes. But is there anything else that you feel like we didn't talk about but you want to contribute to that?
Yeah, like the stress definitely got to me to where December of last year, I actually seeked out therapy. And I remember I told my therapist, I said, I want to stop being crazy. And the turning point was he said, "You're not crazy. You were abused, and now you're going through reactive abuse." And that was kind of like a whole turning point for me where I was like, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense. And I started looking back, and it was like every action that I put into place, there was a reaction
Yep.
for them, whether it be a court filing, withholding visitation. It was like, wow, like you see it as the big picture of, wow, it never stopped.
Yes, I am so glad you mentioned that because I think that's a huge realization that people with lived experience of domestic abuse, I don't even know if they all come to it. Maybe it's just in my area, there's a very good education on it, but this is something I want people to know on a widespread scale, okay? Like, and because this is what has happened for centuries is that the coercive controller abuses you and then you have a natural human response, again, like putting dust up somebody's nose and they're going to sneeze, right? When you abuse somebody and you subject them to power and control, and whenever they try to stop it, you just switch levers, right? And use another lever to as I talk about dust up my nose, there's like a hair like itching my nose. I don't know where, like one of my hairs. Okay. Anyways, so they just switch another lever. And so anyway, so and the result is that you're going to have hypervigilance and you're going to have trauma responses, right? But then what happens is then the coercive controller and the institution will be like, well, that person's having a break with reality. That's actually what was told to me by one of our marital therapists when I went through this. Crystal, you're having a break with reality. And it's like, no, actually, honey, you're not seeing power and control playing out right in front of you, right? Isn't that interesting, though, that I was the client and I knew more about what was happening than the professional, right? The social worker who was right in front of us. Anyway, that's a whole other thing for a whole other time. Not to say anything bad about social workers, but that was her profession. But I think social workers, LMFTs, licensed marriage and family therapists, LPCs, licensed professional counselors, etc., really need to have a good education. I think every profession, quite frankly, needs to have a really good education on identifying power and control. Who's the perpetrator? Who is the target? And every profession. Anyways, that's a whole other story for another time, which is part of my work with the organizational consulting. Anyways, okay, so but they're labeled as hysterical, right, or
Mhm.
unstable, or
Mentally
lacks
unstable in
credibility,
my case.
right? And it's like, no, they are dust up their nose sneezing, right? Being controlled, responding a very natural trauma response to that control, right? But it becomes a part of the abuse and stuff like that. So, but I'm glad that mentioned that, that was a realization you came to because it was a realization I came to. And it was so freeing. Like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm having a natural human response. And I didn't, I didn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like making a mental health condition out of something that's not a mental health condition. That's just a natural response to, it's a natural output to the input that was going in. Does that make sense? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah. Okay. So I'm
And it's
glad
like
you had
once
that
you
realization.
come to that realization, you're able to like stop reacting and you're able to identify it easier. And unfortunately, not a lot of people come to that realization on their own and they continue the cycle. And it's like we need people to like kind of step in and help them be like, hey, this is what we're seeing from the outside. And it's so hard to sit because it's just normal to you.
Yeah. And I want to like de-mental health eyes. That's not a word, but you get what I'm saying, right? De-mental health eyes is again not a word, but this whole thing and just be like, okay, yeah, like I guess mental health conditions can result as a result of this, but the root cause wasn't mental health. It was just a natural
Yeah.
response to being abused. It's not a mental health condition. It's anyway, but that's not to say that mental health conditions can't result from it. But maybe if we stop the abuse family court system, right? If we identify it and we actually stop the coercive controller through which we have power to stop them, maybe we would see the mental health quote unquote issues get a lot better because maybe it's not a mental health condition, it's just a natural response to abuse. But okay, anyway, so before we close here, so I just want to ask a few final questions about what you want people in positions of power and others living through similar experiences to understand. So, what would you, Brittany, want judges, lawyers, policymakers, and other people in positions of power to better understand about financial coercive control and its effects?
I would definitely like them to see that it is real and it has many faces. Like it's not a one size fits all, and that, not every mom that walks into the courtroom or into an organization asking for help is hysterical or crazy. They need help. They don't know because they've lived so long and everything has been stripped away from them that they're 9 times out of 10, they're just trying to protect their children.
Yep. Very good. And then what would you want to say to another person who has lived experience and who is going through something similar right now?
I would definitely like to tell them that, I see you. I completely understand what you're going through. Just, reach out if you need to. Like, there's so many resources. Like, you just have to kind of really put in the work to figure out how to make those resources work for you and build your support system. Like, even if it's not your immediate family, like, find others through social media support groups. Like, find your people and surround yourself with those to keep your mental health in check because it's very easy to slide down and lose track and fall into depression and all the other things.
Yes, yes. And is there anything important that we did not discuss that you think people need to understand?
Just documenting, like, even if it seems simple, like, don't delete anything. Like, no text messages, no email. Like, it sounds tedious and it sounds overbearing, but like, keep everything because that's one thing I've learned. You never know when you're going to need it. Like,
Right.
I've talked to my attorney and she was like, because you kept everything, she's like, you're basically sitting on a gold mine of proving coercive control. You just didn't know it. So that's my
Yes,
best advice is keep everything. Because
yeah,
it may not seem like anything in the moment, but it may be important later.
yes, very good. That's a good pointer right there. So, all right. So thank you so much for joining me for this conversation and for sharing your experience,
Thank
Brittany.
you for
Seriously.
letting me share. Like hopefully it can help somebody else that's in a similar situation.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Um, and just as a future note, the I want to do a future series, and it's in the back of my mind. I'm trying to get through this series first, but the interconnectivity between, health issues and coercive control? Like, what's that interconnectivity? Because there's a lot of folks who, develop cancer and autoimmune conditions, etc., headaches, chronic migraines, right, that don't respond to medication, etc. And so I want to do a white paper on that. I want to get into the literature. I'm a social researcher, so I always like to go to the credible, peer-reviewed research, right? Um, like not opinions, like actual, like well-studied things, right? And from multi-disciplines and connect it all together. And then, of course, I'll do a podcast series on it where I will have the experts on, all those who say yes to come on, and then all of the individuals with lived experience to come on as well, because research is made of human beings. And so it's so important to have individuals such as yourself to come on to share their experience, because it really puts a face to all of this, right? And then, of course, the intent is to really create systemic change, policy change, or in this case with this series, just to implement a policy that already exists, right? The policy already exists; it just needs to be implemented. But that's the problem, is that when institutional norms and practices diverge from an evidence-based approach, that's where the harm occurs. Is basically the thesis of my life's work. So, anyways, I want to have a series, and I'd love to have you back on for that one in specific, and of course any other.
Definitely. There's a few other health issues I didn't really get to dive into that they definitely tried to use against me as a blanket statement of she has multiple health issues. And it's like those
And so,
have
what does
no
that have to do with you
bearing
being a
on
mother? People have health issues, and they still have a right to be a mother.
Yeah, and it's like, again, I was a stay-at-home mom all these years while I was going through these health issues, and that wasn't a problem. But now all of a sudden that I've left, now it's a problem. Okay,
Now
okay,
all of a
I
sudden
see
it's
how
an
this is
issue,
going.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, Brittany, but I'd love to have you on in the future series to highlight that. All right, so this series is a part of a broader effort to better understand how financial coercive control operates in practice and how institutional responses, particularly whether or not that control is interrupted, can either reduce harm or allow it to compound over time. When systems diverge from evidence, lived reality, and the actual conditions people are navigating, serious harm can follow. If this conversation resonated with you, please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember to like, comment, and share. And to learn more about me and my work, including organizational consulting, individual consulting, or speaking, please visit crystalfedeli.com. And to learn more about You Made a Way, please visit youmadeaway.org. And until next time, we continue examining how systems can better align with evidence, autonomy, and lived reality.